What is going on, guys, and welcome back to Touchdowns to Home Runs. My name is Bernie. Thank you for joining us today on the Touchdowns to Home Runs show. Hope that your day is going absolutely fantastic. Today, we're going to be taking another look at the Toronto Raptors and breaking down sort of the three biggest questions that I think the Raptors have going into this upcoming offseason. Now, obviously, an extremely disappointing season for the Raptors. Ended with a record of 27-45, eliminated from the playoffs for the first time in 8 years. But a big offseason coming up. Obviously, you're going to be in the lottery and a really good chance at getting a very, very high pick. You have some money freeing up in free agency as well. But overall, I just think you have some major questions to answer. The first question that I have here is, do you trust Pascal Siakam as the number one option? Now, he had a pretty good year in 2020, 2021, 21.4 points, 7.2 boards, 4.5 assists. But really, ever since the NBA shut down in the March of last year, he just hasn't looked exactly like the same player. Up until the suspension of the season last year, he was averaging just under 24 points, about 7.5 boards, and about 3.5 assists. But in the remaining 8 games of last year, averaged only 17 points. And then in the playoffs against the Celtics, averaged under 15 points. He did get a bit better this season, but I think the main question with Siakam is his inconsistencies. Obviously, a very talented player at times, but also had 3 games this season where he was only in single-digit scoring. Right, and that's something that he hasn't done since back in his 3rd season. I think the NBA, especially right now, is such a league where you have to have superstars on your team. Look at the past NBA champions. You're looking at the Lakers, who have had Anthony Davis, LeBron James as well. You're looking at, teams like the Warriors who had Curry, Thompson, Durant. I mean, these teams, and even now you're looking at other teams in the Eastern Conference, teams like the Nets who are creating super teams. You not only need one superstar, you need multiple superstars. And even the Raptors, who had Kawhi back when they won the championship. Part of me sort of thinks that the Raptors need to add another number one option. This is no knock on Siakam, no knock on OG Anunoby. But yeah, I think they need that number one guy. Now, the original plans were that they go out in the offseason, get a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo. Now, obviously, that was a reach, and now is not going to happen because he re-signed with the Milwaukee Bucks. But the Raptors do have some space getting available. I think they could take on a larger contract. So it'll be really, really interesting to see what Bobby Webster, Masai Ujiri, that Raptors front office sort of attempts to do in that regards this offseason. The number 2 question, I think, is obviously how is the Lowry situation going to play out? Obviously, at the trade deadline, Raptors opted not to trade Kyle Lowry. They held him, didn't get the value they thought they should have gotten in return for him. But that doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to be an easy decision in the offseason. I think everything points to a potential sign and trade happening in this offseason. I don't think that you bring Lowry back. You have VanVleet, Harris, Gary Trent Jr., Malachi Flynn, guys who could fill in sort of those guard positions and potentially sign another guy as well. But the sign and trade is a really, really interesting option because as we'll sort of talk about later on in this video, the Raptors need a center. So potentially, trading a Lowry type guy to a team like the 76ers or a team like the Lakers, who were in for Lowry at the trade deadline and could definitely use a veteran point guard like him, particularly like the Lakers, who are probably not going to be re-signing Dennis Schroeder. And potentially get some value back there as well. Potentially a center, potentially another guard, who knows. They do have some options, as I was saying before, in terms of the way that they could distribute the guards over the roster. Obviously, Fred VanVleet, the most likely guy to do that. But also with Lowry gone, makes a guy like Gary Trent Jr. sort of have room to move into the starting lineup. Obviously, he had a pretty good year, at least in terms of scoring. He showed that with the 44-point game he had against the Cavs. But really, ever since his time coming to the Raptors, has done pretty good on the offensive side of the basketball. The other option in terms of guards is adding another guy in free agency. Devontae Graham, Dennis Schroeder, Spencer Dinwiddie, all guys who are free agents in this upcoming offseason. Looking at a guy like Dennis Schroeder being a big part of what the Lakers have done this year. They've had a ton of injuries, but he's averaged like 17 points per game or something, being a real backbone and even helping the Lakers get to the spot that they are in this season. So who knows? Raptors have some guys internally, could potentially add a guy like Dennis Schroeder, Spencer Dinwiddie as well, which would give you some replacement for Lowry. But to be honest, I don't think Lowry fits the core for the Raptors at all. I doubt Lowry would want to come off the bench, but I don't think, he can be your starting point guard going forward. So even though, the Raptors probably aren't going to be starting the season with Lowry in 2022 or the end of 2021, still a lot of questions here for the Raptors to answer. Third and final question, can the Raptors find their center internally, or does it have to be either in the draft or free agency? Now, to the surprise of many people, Khem Birch has actually been pretty solid for the Raptors at that center position at the later part of the season. My question is just, is Khem Birch good enough to be on a real contending team in the Eastern Conference? Some other fans might be pointing to a guy like Chris Boucher starting center next season, which is sort of valid. He's a very good shot blocker, but he is a bit thin, can be a liability on defense at times, also not as physical as some other centers. But I mean, you look internally, those are two pretty decent options. I just think you're better off if they're probably coming off the bench. Now, a lot of people are going to be pointing to the NBA draft. If the Raptors do end up drafting 7 or 8, as I've spoken a lot about in other videos, you're looking at a guy like Kai Jones, a 6'11 center out of Texas. I mean, I'm 50-50 on him. Statistically, he wasn't great last year, but he did have a big jump from the previous year to what we saw from him last year for Texas. He was in a very different system to the Raptors, though. A team who plays with a ton of height. They really ran 2 centers all year, Texas did. But I mean, he's a very talented player. He's got a lot of upside. I just don't know if he's any better than Khem Birch or Chris Boucher if you're talking specifically about the Raptors making a playoff run next year. Your other option is free agency. Guys like Harrell are available, might give you some veteran experience. But again, I don't know if either of these paths are really going to give the Raptors a guy who's much, much better than Khem Birch or Chris Boucher. So who knows? Maybe they could find a way to make a trade, see if there's anybody else available. But yeah, if the Raptors do add a center, I don't want it to be a guy like Harrell. I want it to be a real good, not only veteran guy, but a guy who's actually going to provide the Raptors something, whether that's just a really good, defensive sort of player, what we were getting with Marc Gasol back in our championship year. So that's why I would sort of lean towards Kai Jones. But again, I'm not sure if that's a pick. Now, if the Raptors do move up in the draft, let's say they're drafting like in the 3 range, somehow are getting into Jonathan Kuminga range. I mean, he is a bigger guy. He's a power forward center. He played in the G League. He did a great job scoring. So you're getting, experience because he played at that G League level. You're getting a very, very good scorer as well, who can provide you a lot on the defensive side of the ball as well. But a lot of options for the Raptors here. Hopefully they end up doing the right thing. But if you guys did make it to this point in the video, I hope that you guys enjoyed. Let me know your comments, your thoughts on these 3 main questions down in the comment section below. Let me know what you guys want to see from the Toronto Raptors, later on in this offseason. If you did enjoy today's video, though, please make sure to leave a thumbs up. Let me know that you did enjoy it, and make sure to hit that subscribe button for more Raptors content just like this. And if there is something in particular, a topic with the Raptors that you want to see me cover, make sure to let me know that down in the comment section as well. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again next time.